Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight. Dun, 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 Barry.
My name is Barry, and I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Jason, for asking me to speak, and happy birthday. And thank you, Jordan. That was awesome. That was like kind of my story, except there's like 30 years after that happened. I've seen some amazing qualifications from this podium in this room and at the other Rodeo, like just really amazing speakers, and I want to tell you that this will not be one of those qualifications. This will be like a B minus, maybe a B, solid B. So I don't know, I don't know where to start. So I guess I'll just start at the beginning. I'm an alcoholic, you know. I've come to the belief that I am bodily and mentally different than other normal people out there, and that I can't function in the regular world without drugs and alcohol or without a spiritual program. Like I can't do it, and I've tried it like so many times, as you'll hear in the story. So I have to be here, like sitting in a meeting or reading the book or talking to another sober alcoholic on the phone or meditating or praying or like doing something, because I can't do life the regular way. And like most of my friends, they're not alcoholics, you know, and they just like do regular stuff, and like good things happen and bad things happen, and like it's just like regular stuff, and they're okay, and they just keep going, and like they don't need to inebriate and anesthetize themselves to the point of like, you know, passing out in order to deal with life. I'm the guy. It's a great line from a movie, if you've ever seen Drugstore Cowboy. At the end of the meeting, Matt Dillon, he's sober, you know, and there's a monologue, and he says, you know, talking about junkies getting sober, and he's like, but eventually, you know, the pressures of everyday life, like having to tie one's shoes, eventually drive us back into, you know, heroin addiction. And that was me. You know, it's like there was just nothing that was palatable about life without something, right? So I'm the Russian Jewish background as well. I was born in Beverly Hills to two parents who, you know, one of them did the best they could. The other one, I don't know about him. So like I'm born, and like we live in Beverly Hills, and like I'm in, you know, it's cool. I got two younger sisters, my two parents, and like life's okay, you know, and like it's 1968, 1969, you know, and it's cool, and like my parents had Beatles records and Elvis Presley, and like those are musicians, for those of you that don't know, and everything was fine, like it was fine, right? And then, and I don't know if I was an alcoholic yet. Like maybe I was born an alcoholic, but I know that I was, you know, even at that point, like somebody who didn't apply himself, or like didn't really try, or didn't really like, you know, somebody that really was, people thought I was bright. They were mistaken, as was borne out through the rest of my life. But, you know, I was a kid, a little wise ass, but everything was good. And in third grade, so I guess I would have been like 8, right? I was supposed to go on this Indian Guides sailing trip, and my parents, like, they fought all the time. Like, it was, but I guess that's what parents did, you know. And so I was supposed to go on this Indian Guides sailing trip, and like I woke up and I was all excited. Like, me and my dad, you know, we all had those Indian Guides names, like, and he was Bigfoot and I was Littlefoot, because you do these Indian Guide names, and those were our Indian Guide names. He wasn't there, and my mom said, don't worry, he'll be here soon. But I knew that the night before they'd had a huge fight, and even though I'd never left my bedroom that was in the back of the house, I had seen her in my mind's eye, like in the driveway as he was pulling out, leaving to not be married to my mom anymore. And he did that many times over the next couple of years, which is really, reassuring to a child when the father comes and goes. They should just go. Especially my dad should have just gone, but he came and went a number of times. But he didn't show up, and we missed the sailing trip, and then he took me to buy a bicycle, because that would fix things. Like a year later, I broke my arm riding that bicycle, and my mother told me that it was because my father had bought me a defective bicycle, and it was his fault. Just to give you some idea of the parental environment that I was dealing with. But anyway, so my parents were getting a divorce, and it was like, 1969 or 1970, like, that wasn't cool like it is now. Like, now everybody gets divorced, and like, it's no big deal to have single parents or to live with just your mom or just your dad. But when I was that age, nobody's parents were divorced. And so I, in third grade, identified as different. And I knew that I was different than the rest of the kids that were in my school, because I only lived with my mom. And my dad came and went occasionally, but I only lived with my mom, who was not happy and had retreated into an addiction of Valium, which lasted 4 or 5 years after that. And so she wasn't really present. And so I was really feeling different, and I had nobody to talk to. And then I had to get glasses. And so now I was the kid who lived with just his mom, who had to wear glasses. Like, that was just like, when you're like 8 years old, that's fucked up. Like, now I'm really different. Like, now, if I was just different on the inside and like nobody knew that I only lived with my mom, now you could see that I was different because I was wearing glasses. But, and I didn't know what to do with that, being different and apart from and separate and not, like, I had lots of friends and like I did stuff, but always on the inside I felt that thing. One day I was sitting in my third grade classroom. I can tell you where I was sitting in the classroom, and in the late 1960s, early 1970s, drugs were just sort of coming on the scene, and they were really bad. Drugs were bad, right? And so we would be shown anti-drug films, in between our nuclear bombing drills of like dropping under the desk and like fire drills, and like we'd get shown anti-drug films. And we were shown an anti-drug film, and this is really great anti-drug film. It was narrated by the actor Greg Morris. I don't know if any of you know who that is. He was the star of television's Mission Impossible, and his daughter went to school with us, and so he was the narrator of this anti-drug film. And there's a moment in the anti-drug film when people are shooting up heroin, I guess, and then overdosing and then being taken away in ambulances. And, this really dark narration. And I'm watching this and I'm like, that's what I want to do. Like, that's what I want to do with my life. And like, while my friends, like, who wanted to be doctors or lawyers or firemen or, whatever. Like now I had my thing. Like I knew what I wanted to do. And the good news about that is that I achieved my life goal long before any of my peers, right? So, and then this vision, this idea was affirmed for me. There were a couple movies during the day. One was called Go Ask Alice, and I don't know if any of you know the song by the Jefferson Airplane, White Rabbit, one pill makes you learn it. So this movie opens with that song is playing, and it's showing kids, walking into a high school. And every so often, and it's these straight-laced, sort of, they look like they're from the 1950s, but it's the 1960s, and the really straight kids, and everybody's walking into school, and then occasionally they'll zoom in on one kid, and he's got a fringe jacket and, bell-bottom jeans, and they're trying to show that, hey, we're identifying who the drug addicts are. I'm like, no, you're showing the cool kids, you're showing the ones that are cool. And so, then I had that image in my mind, and then my family was in the movie theater business, and so this movie Woodstock, it's probably about 1971 now, I think that movie comes out, or maybe 1970, so I'm 9 now. And I'm not allowed in the theater to watch that movie because it's R-rated, but I sit up in the projection booth and I watch that movie like over and over and over again. And I'm like, when can I get my stuff? Like, when can I get this, like, moving? Because it's hard to score drugs at 9, It's just, maybe not today, but then it was really, like, I wouldn't have known where to go. So I filled my need for drugs with my first drugs of choice, television and food. Like, if I could get in that, like, space of, like, having the right things to eat, because we were, like, alone as kids, so if I had the right things to eat and, like, the right television and nobody would bother me, not my mother or my sisters, like, I could be okay, and I could be fine. And that actually got me through the next, like, 3 or 4 years okay, like, just doing okay. But the sad thing about television and food was that you'd gain weight. So then I became the fat kid who lived with one parent who wore glasses. And so, now it was like, and I also was in this program at school called Mentally Gifted Minors, which was MGM for short, which was mostly called Mentally Gifted Morons by any of the regular kids. And so I was really set apart because at least once a day I was taken out of the regular classroom and had to go with the other abnormal children, some of whom were overweight with glasses and probably lived with one parent. But the regular kids were not doing that. And so, I was looking for it. And, like, I found pot, and it was okay. It was okay. It didn't at the time really, like, do for me. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I found this other thing called Vandermint liqueur in the bar that tasted like mint chocolate syrup that apparently I'd been drinking as a child. So I was doing that. I didn't really know that I was getting drunk or that I was drinking alcohol consciously, but I knew that I liked the way that tasted, and I can't tell you that I liked the way it made me feel because I don't remember, but I kept doing it. So that was really the first thing. But I found pot, and it was okay, and a couple more years go by, and I had to get a job, because when I was in high school, we had to get jobs, and, like, I got the best job for me because I got a job at the aquarium store, right? Because I was, like, also the fat kid who's lived with one parent, who wore glasses, who went to the special classes, who had aquariums. That was like, so ugly picture, but not for long, because everybody that worked there was about 3 or 4 years older than me, and they had done every drug there was, and they like had access to every drug there was. So at that job, and the time that, you know, I went from like 14 to 17, I got coke, speed, tried nitrous oxide, mushrooms, methadone. It was great, and I found some things that I liked. You know, I really liked initially cocaine and quaaludes. Like those were really good, and like in the 1970s, you know, those were like great. It was a great combination that, you know, get me up and alert, but also, you know, tingly and happy. And so the quaaludes sort of mitigated the intensity of the coke, and I did that for a while, and like that was okay. And now all of a sudden, I could hang out with the cool kids at my high school because I knew where to get coke and quaaludes, and, you know, and smoke pot with them, and I was now a part of something, right? I was a part of being with these people, and like not only was I a part of being with these people, but I also felt like okay myself, right? I felt okay, and like I also had something to look forward to. Like I really looked forward to using drugs. Like you know, 10th or 11th grade maybe I started using drugs at school, so I didn't really have to look forward to it. But when I was younger, like I could look forward to getting out of school and being able to use drugs. Also in high school, there was a thing, well, I got a lot of time, so there'll just be a lot of drinking and drugs, and then there'll be a lot of sobriety after. I found this other thing that you could go to this store and buy some chemicals. Like you could be a chemist at your house, and you could take the cocaine, and you could put it in one chemical and then add some water and another chemical to it, and then you could extract the top layer, you know, using an eyedropper. I was like a little chemist. And then you could put it out on a piece of glass, and then it would crystallize into this stuff that you could smoke that was called freebase. That was before crack, right? And this is before Richard Pryor set himself on fire using freebase. I used to say I was like freebase and BRP, you know, before Richard Pryor. And that shit was awesome. I mean, it was just awesome. Like, and the other great thing, because like when you do coke, like you really, like you don't have anything to do, but now you're mixing chemicals and doing the coke, so you know, smoke some coke and then you make some more, and then like I was really busy, you know, and I would do that whenever I could, and the great thing is I could sell all the aquarium stuff that I had to get money for that, and I still had a job and I still do that. So it's weird because I'm like going down this road of like liking the freebase and coke, but then I find this other thing when I'm 17 called the Grateful Dead. And so now you go to Grateful Dead concert and you take acid or mushrooms or something, and like I just like any port in a storm for me. So you know I love that too. So if I could, you know, go to a Grateful Dead concert, and I would drive all over the place to go, like really long distances on drugs, and take a lot of drugs there, and had a lot of like, I had all these sort of like granola-y, you know, vegetarian, acid-dropping, mushroom-eating Grateful Dead friends, but then I had my like crack, coke, you know, friends here, and it was different. And I'd also like was supposed to attend college in some way during this time, and like if you can imagine, like I would freebase if I wasn't going to the Grateful Dead concerts, or I would go to the Grateful Dead concert. I had not really applied to college or anything, but you know somehow I'd managed to get accepted to Cal State Northridge, and after the first semester they said you're on probation. After the second semester they'd asked me to leave, but then they said you can come back, and then sometime in the middle of that third semester, which would have been my sophomore year, but I think I had enough credits to maybe be an incoming freshman, they asked me to leave. That apparently, you know, driving to Grateful Dead concerts and smoking freebase and never going to class was not okay. Not that they knew I was doing those other things, but I guess attendance was something that you needed to do in order to be in college. So, and I knew, like, this is, you know, I knew, like, all along, I knew from the first time I started using Coke that I was a drug addict, you know, I was a drug addict. And oh, by the way, this is a very funny story for those of you that have done Coke, but, like, one of the first times I ever did Coke, it came in those little vials and I had a little Coke spoon, and, like, I stopped one night with actually cocaine left. Later on, I would never go to sleep if I had money or drugs. Like, if I had either one of those things, it was just, you keep going. And I put it away, and, like, I hid it in my closet, and when I came home from high school to find it, it was gone. And I can tell you that for the next 8 years, every time I did Coke, I looked for it. Like, I'd go in the closet and I'd look for that Coke because I knew it had to be somewhere, and I never fucking found it. Anyway, so I got sent away to another college that was back east, but it had a covered bridge that had snow on it, and it felt like a real college. And it was called New England College, which hit a couple buttons for me because it had the word college in it, which was important to my parents, and New England was far away. And I thought, well, you know, I'll cool it. I won't smoke freebase here, and I won't, like, and I'll really, and I just smoke pot, like, 24/7, and did Coke occasionally. So I was sober during this time by my accounts. And here's the good news about that particular school was, like, there were lots of other people who were like me but weren't as smart as me, and so I did really well. And as a result of going there and doing really well for, you know, the year that I went there, oh, and they had their own ski hills, so students skied for free. So I also skied every day, which was, it was just a great experience. But anyway, in the state of California, if you had enough credits and a really, like, a 2.4 GPA, they had to take you across the street. It was like the state law. So, like, all of a sudden, like, now I'm here at UCLA, and oh, it's hard because there's actually people who are interested in being at college, and my interest was just, you know, in creating some cover for my drug use. And now that I was back here, it was, like, very exciting, and I was, like, back into my thing. But I wanted to major in art history, and when I met with my counselor, I said, I want to major in art history, and she said, oh, you're in the wrong college. You're in the College of the Letters and Sciences. You'll have to reapply to the College of Fine Arts. And I said, I don't want to do that. What are my choices? And she's like, political science, sociology, anthropology, English. I'm like, English? I speak English. How hard can that be? How can I compete with people who actually do the reading, though? That was very daunting. But I discovered heroin and romantic poets at this time. And, like, that was the perfect combination that you know, I could read Yeats or Keats or Byron or Tennyson and just, like, really understand, you know, what was being talked about. And I was great in the classroom. I was really lively in class discussions, but not so good on the homework or tests or writing part of it, which they count towards your grades. They don't really count the part where you're talking in class. So I found heroin, and it was, like, great. It was great. And, like, that vial of cocaine that I never found, like, that high that I got the first time that I ever used heroin, like, it was just so phenomenal. And, like, everything went away, like, all the voices in my head and, like, all the differences and all of the shame and the guilt and the sadness, and, like, it was gone. And, like, I was just in this, like, amazing place, and it was just the greatest thing. and I started snorting it, and then I started shooting it, and then I started shooting heroin and coke, and like that was just the best thing, because now I'd finally been the guy in the film, and like it was good, and like I knew I was a drug addict, and like I made it my business to be a drug addict, and like they talk about like you'll hear the term functioning alcoholics and people who have jobs and stuff, or like I was not like when I finished college, I needed to make drugs my full-time job because it was just something that, I needed to work at. I wasn't as good as maybe some of these other people, so I needed to work at being able to get money to obtain drugs and then to take the drugs, and like I couldn't work or like earn money or do anything like that. So I faked my college graduation. I finished college. There were a number of things that I needed to do that I hadn't done, but they allowed me to walk on graduation anyway, which triggered the obligatory parentally financed trip to Europe by appearing to have graduated from college. And so I went to Europe, and the problem with going to Europe, though, was I'd sold the Eurail pass that my grandparents had given me before I left, and I'd maxed out the emergency credit card that my mother had given me before I left. And so like all of a sudden I'm like broke in Paris, and like I just worked at being a heroin addict there for a little while, and then I came back and I was like 23 or 24 years old and a heroin addict, and like, all I had to do was like get about $50 a day, which is hard. When you have no skills and you can't like actually work at a job. And so, it's like scams or, this, whatever. And like, mostly though it was stealing, but I was like a pussy thief. Like I only stole from my family, really. Because what recourse do they have, right? And there are so many great stories about stealing from my family, and I was selling the family silver one place setting at a time. Maybe it wouldn't be detected, but I knew there was kind of a ticking clock because my mother had a big party around Christmas time, and like it would certainly be discovered. And it was discovered that I had been selling the family silver. And so my mother said, "You can't live here anymore, and you have to go to rehab." And so I went to rehab. I went to I don't know what it was called, at Cedars-Sinai. I checked into Cedars. I was 24 years old, heroin addict, and they checked me in. And but they didn't like the fact that one night I elected to go down in the elevator, walk over to the Hard Rock Cafe, ask somebody who was getting in their car at the valet car park to give me a ride to the heroin dealer's house. Went to the heroin dealer's house. He had coke that night too. And then I went back to the hospital, and like in my room, like I'm like doing this. They asked me to leave the next day, and then I got put into another hospital at Century City Hospital, and I thought that this is the end of the road. Like, I need to get sober. It's 1986, 1985, and I'd had a good, like, really, really good, like, 10 or 15 year, like, run, and, like, it's time. And so I did my 30 days, and I got out, and I went to Sundowners meeting at Cedars, and I took a 30-day chip, and, I didn't really get it, I guess, because I left and went and got loaded. And that began like the most fucked up year of my life, 1986, 1987. Am I almost out of time? Because that's it. Then, 14 minutes. Okay, so that was just the worst year of my life. But about 6 weeks after being out of that hospital, some girl told a girl that I liked, that I'd gone out with a few times, that I was a heroin addict, and I was really angry. And so I picked up the phone, and I called that girl to say, "Fuck you, like, how could you tell Emily that I was, doing this?" But that girl wasn't home, and this other girl answered the phone, and I'm like, "Oh, Kim's not there, but you're there, and like, what are you doing? Like, do you have any money? Like, I didn't have a car anymore either, but she had money and a car and she also liked to take heroin. And so we got high that night, and like the next date was a Passover Seder with both of our families. And 3 days later, I'm like, you know what? We should get married. Like, that would be really great. I didn't really want to get married, but she wouldn't write any more bad checks to pay for more dope. But when we got engaged, I said, let's celebrate, and you can write a check. And so that was my impetus for getting engaged to her. A couple months later, she didn't come home, and I'm like, where is she? I called her sister, and I'm like, where is she? And she's like, she checked herself into a drug rehab, and she thinks that you should do the same. She was just supposed to get money so we could go on methadone, and like it was going to be okay, and she didn't do that. And then, so I needed to get my $50 for that day, and I went out and I got that, and because I couldn't figure out what I should do, and I shot up, and the physical withdrawal symptoms went away, and my head did not shut off. And that was that moment that they talk about in here when it stopped working. It didn't work. It didn't do for me what it had done for me, for 15 years. And the wreckage, I didn't give a shit about. The damaged relationships and the arrests and the failure to graduate, I didn't care about any of that stuff. This is all I cared about, because all that stuff went away when I put the drugs in my body, and it didn't go away. And I'm like, this is really different. So I checked myself into a Pasadena community hospital. And I paid attention. And, I got out of that hospital and moved back in with the girl, and we tried to live together, and we made it about 9 months sober. She was more sober than me. And I got loaded twice more, each for a day. And then she and I split up. And then I hit what was a real absolute bottom, and that she was gone. I'd been sober for 9 months, and now I wasn't anymore. And I had no job. I had no college degree. I had nothing. And so I called my sponsor, and I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, meet me tomorrow morning at 6:45 at the Marina Center. I'm like, that's too early for me. And he said, if you don't meet me, I don't sponsor you anymore. And so I went to that meeting, and that sponsor saved my life that day, and he died of a suicide drug overdose at 10 years of sobriety. But he saved my life, and that's the way that this works for me. Is he had the message, he carried the message at the time, and it was okay. I'm at a low point in my life, but what do I do? And one of my friends said, well, you should get a job. I said, I don't know how to get a job. And he said, well, you look in the newspaper and you get a job. And so I got a job as a headhunter for computer programmers. Not anything that I was qualified to do, headhunting or computer programming or job. But I learned how to go to work. I learned how to get up in the morning and go to work. But I didn't like it that much. And one night, about 6 weeks into my sobriety date is August 8th, 1988, which is another reason why I don't drink, is because my sobriety date is 8/8/88. And that's a good date, and I don't, if nothing else, that's a reason. So anyway, one night I'm driving home from a meeting at his house, and I still don't really get AA entirely, but I understand that one alcoholic has to help another alcoholic. And so there's an alcoholic, and he's not an alcoholic. He's just a drunk driver, and he's on Sunset Boulevard, and he's weaving all over the road. And I'd had some driving issues in my day. I don't think I had a driver's license at this time. But I'm driving also, and I say, pull over. You're going to kill yourself or somebody else or get arrested. I'll take you anywhere you need to go. So he pulls over, and I take him where he needs to go, and he says, give me your phone number, because I may need you to help me find my car tomorrow night, because I'm really drunk. So is it okay? And the next night, he invites me out for a drink, and I go out to the Polo Lounge at the Beverly Hills Hotel with him, and he's drunk. And he says, this guy saved my life last night. He saved my life. And I always wanted to leave. Like, I just wanted to crawl out of there because I was embarrassed. But before I could get out of there, this middle-aged Jewish man sitting in the corner, which is what I've now become, by the way, but I wasn't at the time. He says, tell me the story. How'd you save that guy's life? And I'm like, oh, I'm a junkie. You know, I'm a bad drug addict. And like, but I help other alcoholics. And that's how I stay sober now, because that's what I understood at 6 weeks, which really is the basis for this program, right? We're all kind of shitty people, but we do nice things, and then we get to stay sober for a little while. And so anyway, he's like, well, tell me your story. And I tell him my story, and he's like, wow, you know, I think you could make it in my business. Do you want to be a Park Avenue advertising executive? And I said, yes, I do. I don't know what that means, but I do. And he said, how soon can you move to New York? I said, I can move to New York now. Like, I had nothing going on. And so a week later, he sends me a one-way plane ticket, and like, I moved to New York to go be a Park Avenue advertising executive. And like, the night before I moved to New York, Kirk Gibson hits a home run in the 1988 World Series, and like, I was there, and like, I'm a huge Dodger fan. You know, it's one of the most important things to me in my life, and like, it was just the greatest moment in my life. Like, I'm moving to New York to start a job, and like, Dodgers are winning in the World Series, and like, wow, this AA, it works, you know. It wasn't, so that was the first 6 weeks of my sobriety, and it's been all downhill from that moment. No, okay, so this is great for me because I'm in New York, I don't know anybody, and so what happens to me in New York when I don't know anybody? I go to AA because I don't know where else to go, and I'm completely anonymous, so I'm not running into my old girlfriend or anybody I used with, and I'm 3 blocks away from the craziest room in the city called the 79th Street Workshop, and like, I'm just going to meetings all the time, and like, I make my life about Alcoholics Anonymous, and like, that's when I sort of start to come to understand what this thing is all about, right? And so it's where I learned to understand the steps, and like, how the steps, you know, worked in my life, and like, what happens. And you know, the first step was easy for me. Like, I was powerless over drugs and alcohol, and my life had become unmanageable. Like, that was a no-brainer. And like, you know, I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. It doesn't mention God, right? All it says to me is that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity, because I had a problem with God at the time. I don't now. I don't really think about it. But at the time, I took that to mean, do I believe that AA can work for me? And I did. I really believed that this could work for me at that point. I'd been sufficiently indoctrinated and brainwashed, and I said the word brainwashing to my sponsor at the time. He said, your brain could use a good washing. It's not a bad thing. And so, okay, I believe it can work for me. And then I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of a power greater than myself. Well, it didn't say that I did it. It said I made a decision to do that, you know, because what I learned around here is like the way you actually turn your will and your life over to the care of God is you work the next 9 steps. That's the way that it happens. And when you get to 12, it says, as the result of the steps. A lot of people read it and they say, as a result of these steps, but it's the result. It's the only thing that you get. You get to have a spiritual awakening by working those 9 steps. And like, that's what I got. And so, you know, I took an inventory. I read it to my sponsor. I you know, saved the list for my inventory, which became my 8th step. I immediately turned around and humbly asked God to remove my shortcomings. I became willing to have my shortcomings removed, and then I just asked God to remove my shortcomings. They didn't get all removed at one time, but what I learned around here was that if I have shortcomings, like the way that my anger gets removed is if I don't act on it, right? If I have a shortcoming, if I don't take the actions, it goes away. And it's, a lot of people will say, you know, you don't think your way into right actions, you act your way into right thinking. And like for me, by taking different actions in the 6th and 7th step, like my behavior actually changed. Not perfectly. I'm sober like 25 years and I'm still like, ask any of the guys over here, or, you know, I'm like fucked up sometimes. But mostly I'm not, you know, mostly I'm not. And I don't get to be perfect, you know, around here, but I get to be sober and like I get to show up for my life. And like I've had lots of different periods of my recovery. You know, I've had the first 4 or 5 years were really great and blissful and like all about AA, and like the, you know, the next 5 years I started to get successful in work and had girlfriends, like things that I'd never been successful in, and so I drifted away, and you know, but I would always get like smacked in the face, either emotionally or professionally or personally, and I'd like come back here. And so, you know, I'd come back for a while, and then like I got life started going really good for me, you know, because sometimes it starts going really good, and like I had a really good job and I was getting married, and like don't marry somebody you meet in an AA meeting who's a newcomer when you have 10 years of sobriety, and like she's been in and out of the program a lot of times, like, you know, but because that's not gonna work. But it took 10 years to figure that out. But you know, what happened during that period of time was like I found myself in a situation about, you know, 15, 16 years of sobriety where I had a very big job, I had a wife, I had a newborn son, and it looked, and a house in Beverly Hills, and like it looked really good. Like it looked really good. It was sort of the picture that, you know, you wanted it to have look like, except it wasn't really that picture because I hated the fucking job. I knew nothing about how to bring up a son. My wife was addicted to painkillers and had been in and out of rehabs a bunch of times. And like, you know, within 2 months, like God took care of that, because my wife wound up in rehab, I wound up leaving the job, and like now all of a sudden, like it got all stripped away. You know, it got stripped away. And like, you know, what happened to me about 8 or 9 years ago was I walked into Jason's house, you know, because I needed to recommit myself to this program. And like I, you know, met this group of guys who like, you know, I was connected to them. Like I'd known Peter since I was a kid, and like I just related to the other guys, and like I found a meeting that I started going to now really regularly and started coming back into this program about 8 or 9 years ago. And like through that commitment and like through those relationships and through working with a sponsor, and I was able to get a divorce from my wife and like be secure enough to say, I don't deserve to be in this marriage, and like I can't help you. And like, you know, one of my friends once said to me, I don't believe that your wife can ever get sober while she's married to you. And that's not a knock on me. It was just like I made it okay for her to get loaded because I picked up the pieces every time she fell. And like, you know, she's sober almost 2 years now, and that's as long as we no, she is. Peter knows her. I love her to death. But you know, so now, you know, here I am, like I'm like really, really comfortable in my own skin most of the time. I'm a pretty good dad. I'm a decent boyfriend. I'm like a reasonable employee at my job. I'm pretty okay to most of the people I encounter on a daily basis. I still have issues with driving the car sometimes, especially when I'm alone. But it's not as bad as it used to be. You know, it's great. It's like this gave me something that I was always looking for. And, you know, when I was that kid in the 3rd grade classroom, and like I felt that emptiness and like that difference and that not a part of, and like everything else, and like was looking for the thing to fix it. This was the thing, you know, this was the thing to fix it, because it made me feel okay with who I was. And like most of the time I feel okay with who I am. And at the basest level, the reason why I turned to drugs and alcohol, the reason why I turned to dysfunctional behavior, the reason why I turned to being an asshole or whatever, because it's like I don't feel okay inside. And like as a result of coming here and staying sober and working the steps and going to meetings occasionally and helping other people, like, I get to feel okay most of the time. And that's a spiritual awakening for me. So thanks for letting me share tonight.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.